Section 8, now called voucher housing, a viable way of deconcentrating poverty. So what I'm going to do today is just give you an overview of where this housing is located, meaning where are there landlords that will accept this housing. Basically what we do is, with my colleague Professor Rule, is we take a technology called geographic information system, which is just a fancy name of computer mapping, to identify spatial patterns of voucher housing in Atlanta. And we want to answer two questions with this. The first is voucher housing concentrated in specific neighborhoods in the city and in the metropolitan area, or dispersed throughout Atlanta? If it's dispersed, then maybe AHA's goal would be achieved. But if it's not, then it can't be. Then our second question is if it is in specific neighborhoods, what are the socioeconomic and racial composition of these neighborhoods? Are people actually going to be moving to better neighborhoods than what they have already? So what I'm going to show you first is voucher housing, where it's located by census tract in the city of Atlanta. And you'll see two things on this map that are very pertinent to this discussion. First of all, it tends to be clustered around where the existing public housing projects are. Basically, it's very much clustered to the southwest and southeast of the city. The northern part of the city, which is more wealthy, has virtually no Section 8 housing. The second one, when we want to talk about, well, how does this housing relate to the racial composition of the city? Well, guess what? It's located in predominantly black neighborhoods, to the southeast and the southwest of the city. Again, there's very, very little. If you look at the percentages, it's the south, it's predominantly black. What about poverty? If we look at the relationship to where the voucher housing is, where the black population is, and where all the poverty is, guess what? The map looks almost the same. It's the same areas, southeast and southwest of the city. So what we have here is three combinations: public housing, majority African American, and high poverty. We can look at this a different way with a chart. If we look at percentages of voucher housing per census tract, and what this does to, or what this means in terms of both racial composition and socioeconomic level, well, if we look at census tracts that have zero public housing, or zero voucher housing, the racial composition on average is 75% white and 15% black, and the poverty rate is 11% on average. If we go up to the highest percentage range of voucher housing, which is 10 to 16%, it's almost flipped. It's 85% African American and 6% white, and the poverty jumps up to an average, this is just an average, of 34%. We can do the same thing with income. If we look at census tracts that have zero voucher housing, the income level, average income level, is over $67,000. The racial composition, again, is 75% white and 15% black. If we go up to the highest range, from 10 to 16% in the city of voucher housing, the median income drops down to about $24,000. The racial composition is 6% white and 85% black. Within the city of Atlanta, the majority of voucher housing is concentrated in poor black neighborhoods. It does little to achieve AHA's objective of deconcentrating poverty. In fact, I would argue, and I think the maps speak for themselves, that it reinforces rather than curtailing existing concentrated poverty and residential segregation. What about greater metro Atlanta, the whole metropolitan area? The AHA states that you can take a voucher and move anywhere in the Atlanta metropolitan area. You can actually move anywhere in the country, apparently. Is voucher housing more dispersed across neighborhoods outside of the city? And I want to add that the Atlanta metro area is the 9th largest in the country and the fastest growing. All right, so this is a pretty economically prosperous area. If we look at where voucher housing is in the Atlanta metro area, you'll see it's clustered around the city. To the south east, and southwest sides. There's very little when you get out to the outer counties. How does this relate to race? Again, the voucher housing tends to be clustered where the black neighborhoods are, both in the black suburban neighborhoods. How about poverty? Well, there's some outer places in Metro Atlanta that have some poverty, but it pales in comparison to the poverty in the city and sort of a little bit outside the south and southeast part. So again, you have the same pattern as you had in the city of Atlanta, the relationship between voucher housing, race, and poverty. It's almost exactly the same thing as in the city. Where you have no voucher housing, it's majority white, really low poverty, 6%. Where you have the majority of housing, voucher housing, 10 to 20%, it's majority black, and the poverty rate goes up to 30%. Again, with income, majority white, 0 vouchers, 71,000 for median household income. Go down to 10 to 20% voucher housing, majority black, and the income is a little bit higher than the city, but not by much. It's 26,000. So the bottom line here, the metropolitan distribution of voucher housing basically mirrors that of the city. There's very, very little difference. And we're not even dealing in Metro Atlanta with issues of transportation, which is another real big issue. Again, what does this tell us? It tells us that this is reinforcing, the use of vouchers is reinforcing rather than curtailing existing concentrated poverty and residential segregation. So, conclusions and policy recommendations. I'd say, and I'd say that this data supports this, that relying solely on vouchers for public housing relocation, forced relocation, will not achieve the overall objective of deconcentrating poverty. If anything, such reliance simply compounds existing levels of poverty in the city and segregation, both in the city and the greater metropolitan area. I would say then that the where of relocation should be more fully integrated into AHA's public housing elimination program. There's a crucial need for a comprehensive relocation plan that is inclusive of all affected parties, meaning the residents themselves. And this plan should be developed before any of the demolitions begin. So residents have some kind of certainty and guarantee about where they're going to be. That's it. Does anybody have any questions?